Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can scale and thrive. And today's guest is Leeatt Rothschild. Hi, Leeatt.
Hello, Adi. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. Thank you for being a guest. I am so excited to have you here because we're going to talk, first of all about your business, which I find fascinating. And then we're going to touch about systems. And even before we start recording, we talked about, you mentioned to me the experience of how important you realize how important having SOPs is for a business, right? So it really helps businesses grow. We're going to touch about that as well. But let me introduce you. Let me basically go over the bio, and I'm fascinated by your business. So basically, you are the founder and CEO of Packed with Purpose. And basically what you do is it's a B2B business, right? It's you help businesses to give gifts, right? But it's not just gifts. It's gifts that are any gift that it basically creates an impact, right? Because of where you source it, what type of gift, etc. So tell us more about and what you do.
Yes, absolutely. So as you mentioned, Adi, Packed with Purpose, we're a corporate gifting company with a social impact. So all of the products in our gifts do good. And that helps our clients who are sending gifts make sure that their gifts stand out, whether they're sending a gift to their clients, to their employees, to a prospect, and they stand out because we tell the stories of impact in our gift boxes. And that's what really makes our gifts different. So people love the mugs or the brownies or the notebooks or the granola, but what they love most of all is feeling like they're part of creating, positive social impact. And that's through the stories that we tell about all the products in our gifts.
That's amazing. So tell me a story.
So I'll give you a few examples of products. So we source this delicious granola from Washington, D.C., that is made by a social enterprise, so by an organization that provides job training through the production of cookies and granola and different baked goods to women who are survivors of abuse or who might have barriers to employment. And they basically get Safe Serve certified. They learn all about, baking and confectionery so that they can gain financial stability and then find a job so that they can really thrive in life. And in the process, they make this delicious granola, and that's what we include in our gifts. So that's one example. And then, for example, we've got these really beautiful wood-bound notebooks that are sustainably sourced, and they're produced by a company that's committed to reforesting the planet. So for every product that they sell, they are also planting a tree, and they've planted trees in 6 continents. So all continents minus Antarctica.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So cool. So how did you come up with that idea? Like in 2016, when you started the company, how did this all come about?
Yeah. Well, my background has been a dance between the worlds of social impact and business. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Paraguay years ago. I worked in marketing consulting. And then right before I started the business, I was actually advising chief sustainability officers on their corporate social responsibility strategy, helping them basically take, oftentimes millions or hundreds of millions of dollars and implement and invest those dollars so that they could have a financial return for the business, but also a positive social impact. So it was a cold day in Chicago, a typical day in December, and our office was riddled with corporate gifts. So, tins of popcorn, baskets of cookies and brownies, and boxes of fruit. And it just dawned on me that while all of the gifts were wonderful that our vendors had sent to us, they really had no social impact. And there was an opportunity for companies to be sending better gifts. And a better gift would be a gift that actually, demonstrated your corporate citizenship, demonstrated that you care about being a good, part of society, because companies do. They're just looking for an easy way to do that. And so that's where I got the initial idea for Packed with Purpose.
Wow. And then tell me about the journey that started. Okay, so you started in 2016. You were standing in the office having that idea. How did you materialize it from an idea to an actual business?
Yeah, so it happened both slowly and quickly. So I had the initial idea. I kept talking about it, so sort of dreaming out loud and sharing it. And then for my daughter's first birthday party, I basically said, let me take this idea of a goodie bag and sort of flip it on its head. And so I created the first, what I used to call a crappy version, but what I was told by my designer, we'll call it a prototype. So it was our first prototype. And I basically gave it to all of the guests at the birthday party, to the adults, to the parents, many of whom worked at corporations or various companies and organizations, who either might have been decision makers or could have influenced the decision for, gifts. And I put that gift together, followed up with a short conversation. So inexpensive market research, asked a bunch of questions, would you use it? What price point? What do you like about it? How could it be improved? What would you need in order to move forward? And that was a great first way for me, not only to get an understanding of what the, future customer might want, but also to go through the motions of the business. How do you market it? How do you tell the stories? How do you buy the product? What does inventory management look like? What does packaging need to look like? So that was the very first step. And then I launched an Indiegogo campaign several months later. And then after that, I said, all right, I'm going to move forward full time and launch the business.
Wow. All right. So you launched the business. Then what? Like, what was the journey next?
Oh, I don't even know where to go on that. So then what, the business has really grown. It's been a wonderful experience, really humbled. And I think a lot of this is that, companies are becoming more aware of, what their broad stakeholders, whether it's shareholders, whether it's employees, whether it's clients, what they want from a company is not just that they provide a product or service, but that they really, provide a benefit to society. So we've seen a lot of growth, and it's been exciting to figure out how to continue to grow and how to create the right systems to grow, and how do we improve, various aspects of the business to make either inventory receipt easier, or storage of products, or, client management or marketing. There's so many aspects to a business, but really trying to improve all of those aspects for the betterment of the business, and really the team that's helping grow the business alongside me.
Absolutely. When people ask me, when is the right time to document processes and procedures rather than create systems, I say, first of all, when you're starting a business, you first of all have to find your clients, right? So it seems like that's what you did, is first of all, figure out your product, then find a few clients, right? Because start. Who was your first client, for instance?
Well, so, interesting for corporate gifts, America, I don't know who wrote the memo, but in corporate America, people believe that you gift during the holiday season. So in Q4. So, I launched the Indiegogo campaign, and shortly thereafter, we had our first, corporate holiday season. So it wasn't one client. We had, suddenly hundreds of clients, some of whom were only ordering, maybe 10 gifts or 20 gifts, but others were ordering, 50, 100, maybe, 500. A very early first client was someone from waste management. It was our first full year in business, and they bought over 1,000 gifts. So that was, a really exciting client to have, and just thinking about documenting processes, we were documenting processes before we even realized we were creating a process. So one example of that, so early on, so we source all the products for our gifts. That goes to our warehouse where, every single gift box has its own instructions, the pick instructions for what to pick, what to package, and then what to ship. And so early on, we had clients that said, I love this gift. I have a brochure that I would want to put in the gift box for you to ship out. And all of a sudden, we realized we needed a process to make sure that when a brochure or, maybe it was some clients wanted to send like a photo of their team in their gift to their client so that it was more personal. Whatever that was, there was something called, a client insert. Well, how do we make sure that that client insert is received appropriately, that we know, that there's a SKU or a product number, that it's placed on the shelf and then it is used in the right gift. So we created a process for that before we even realized that we were putting together that kind of process. But, once you do it once and you realize it works, it saves a lot of time. And when you don't have that process, that's when you really realize, why is this taking a lot longer? We could make this more simple and straightforward.
Absolutely. So you just basically gave me the answer of like I was going to ask you, what are the benefits that you experience in terms of having those processes in place? So you just said, in terms of making it more efficient, basically faster,
right.
Able to repeat, being able to service all those customers that you already had.
Reducing time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for us, a lot of it was like the time reduction, because if we have, dozens of clients, especially in a condensed amount of time, sending, whether it's a pamphlet or it's a photo or it's an insert, whatever it might be, we want to make sure that we know what product pertains to which organization. And we need to make sure that the, kitting instructions, that's the, the instructions for what products are going into each gift, result in an error-free gift, right? So we want to make sure that we're not spending too much time on that correspondence, both between our team and our clients, as well as our team and the people on the, at the warehouse on the floor. But we also want to make sure that there's no errors. And so documenting all of that is a great way for us to do so.
Absolutely. So it's basically risk mitigation, in terms of ensuring quality control, right?
Correct. Yes.
What other reasons do you see now that you have the experience of, it's 7 years later?
Yeah.
What experience do you have? Do you see, what experience can you share in terms of like why documentation is so important? Maybe with having employees and letting go of employees, hiring new employees leaving. How does that affect?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, with employees' departure, and as you think about bringing someone new on, we recently realized that there was a whole set of, responsibilities and tasks that we had not documented. And with an employee's departure, right, with that individual leaving, knowing that we were going to be bringing someone on very shortly, we needed to make sure that all of those documents, right, all of those processes were documented. Forget the basics of, where do you log in and what is the password and, who has access. I guess, that is really important, but that's the very first step. But beyond that, it's, why would I want to use this system, and how do I use this system? And, if I'm sharing a report or sharing insights or information, who should that be shared with and at what cadence? And really just documenting the process of something like that, all the way to making updates to our WordPress site, right? So, what are the pages that need to be maintained in which way, and how do you do that? Whose feedback do you need? Who needs to provide the ultimate, check so that everything can get uploaded? All of that is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how do you get your team behind it, like behind documenting? Do you get resistance at all?
That's a good question. For right now, interestingly, folks that are part of the operations and finance part of the business, they're process oriented. So there's no pushback on creating processes, because if you're working in the realm of operations, that's how you think. On the sales part of our business, the individual, for me at least, who's leading that, is very process oriented. And we've been taking a process and methodical approach so that also there's been no resistance. On the marketing side, that's where we recently realized we did have a gap and we didn't have all of these SOPs written. And, in bringing on someone new, we really needed to codify, how do you update WordPress? How do you send emails? How do you use, our CRM software, HubSpot, to make landing pages? So things that seem so basic and are effortless, when someone knows it, you suddenly realize that if knowledge resides in a single individual or even in a few people, but isn't documented, it's just at risk of not being preserved.
Absolutely. I agree. So how do you manage to make sure that those processes are followed by all? That's one of the questions that I'm always being asked by business owners. It's one thing to document, but how do we ensure those processes are followed by all? And my answer, and I've done many webinars on it, speaking engagements, it's what I say is like it has to start from the top, right? It has to start from the CEO, from the founder, really start from the top, because if you have the person at the top not really believing in it or doing it, then it just doesn't get implemented. And I see you as a great example of it, because you definitely are so convinced that it's needed, right? So do you think that makes a difference, that you actually are very process oriented, or at least very, very much bought into the idea that you need processes?
I would say the two things that came to mind is, yes, I agree. If at the top, the CEO and the leadership team or the team leads, if they're not bought in, no one below is going to want to implement or create and follow those SOPs or procedures. The other thing is, I think that at the end of the day, each person on a team at an organization is an individual, and so every individual wants to know why this is going to be beneficial, and so it's important for them to know why to create the process, but also why it's important to, continue to make sure that they're following it and updating it when it needs to be updated. Right. So I guess an example, it's, it might seem trivial, but if someone's going to go on vacation or on PTO, if there is no SOP for a function that they usually are the person that oversees, how can someone else in the company, cover for them? So, if someone wants to take a longer PTO, it's a great reason to make sure that, the function around the business that you're in charge of is going to be left in good hands by ensuring that SOP is drafted, it's updated so that it reflects, the current reality. And so there's, selfish reason sounds negative, but I think that, there's something to be said to make sure that people realize it ultimately will also benefit you. It's not just to benefit others.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's like when we start an engagement with a client, that's the first thing that we do is obviously the client that bring us on is already bought in, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't bring us on. But the first thing that we do, and I just had a meeting, for instance, with a new client yesterday and their team, and it just went around the room and really wanted to hear from each individual why process documentation is important for them. Because from my experience, if you don't get the buy-in, there is not going to be a follow-through, and they're not going to follow up and not going to make sure that the processes are being implemented. So I agree with you that one of the key ingredients of making sure that the processes are followed by all is that there is a buy-in from the group. And it's what does it do for them, not just for the group, but what does it do personally for them? And the example with the PTO is perfect. But then let's talk a little bit more about the processes being followed. I mean, do you feel like in your company that your staff are bought in and they're actually following the procedures?
Yes. And again, I don't know other companies intimately. I only know my company. Right. I'm gonna say we're a lean team for the amount of throughput, the amount of gifts that we ship. So every gift that gets shipped, there's a lot of things that have to make that work. And so in order for all of those things to work, to know what how much inventory needs to be purchased, which SKUs, when they arrive, who we have to pay, which clients' invoice need to be sent which invoices have been paid, which deposits have not been paid, which ones we need to follow up with, and that's just thinking off the top of my head of a few things that have to occur. There's so many people across different teams that are touching that. And so, I almost would say not having a process for that, we would not be able to run as a business.
Right.
So I think everyone feels more confident in what their contribution is to that process, from someone saying, I'm interested in gifts, to a gift, landing at the right address. And so having everyone clear on what part they play, what are their responsibilities, and then how their part of the chain connects to others. Maybe that's a more verbose way of saying process, but I feel like that's the part that intuitively connects with people. Maybe creating a process document doesn't sound really exciting, but if you tell someone, you'll know exactly when your approval is needed or when this information is required from you. And from there, it'll go on to this person and this will be the result. I think everyone just, A, there are less errors. B, everyone's day job, what you do, is more enjoyable because you don't have headwinds.
That's totally true. I mean, that is a key in making sure the processes are followed by all, is that everyone understands where do they fit in the process, right? But as a result, showing also that there will be less errors, that we will have satisfied customers or clients and make the job more enjoyable. I think it's a key in terms of people buying into, yes, I do want to use that process. So there are two aspects. There is the personal buying, what is it there for you, but also showing how they will be part of the group and how basically they will create a better product, better output, and make it enjoyable, which I think those are great points. What do you do in order to, because part of, getting the process followed, you have to have some accountability, right? So what are your successful actions in terms of making sure that your team is accountable to actually execute those processes?
I would say it's very clear when a process is not being followed. Either there is interpersonal communication challenges, or there's like a crisis, or there's a problem, right? Like a gift was shipped to the wrong address, right? Maybe it doesn't sound like a crisis, but there's there's a QC breach. And so then it's figuring out, how did that occur? Where did it go wrong? Was it communication? Was it documentation? Was it, literal, like the data entry was wrong? And then I think on the, the other side is when you have people that don't understand what their role is and how they work with others, that's where the communication can get strained. And no one wants that. We want to do our jobs and feel good and feel motivated and inspired by the people we work with. But the fact of the matter is, the interpersonal part of working in any organization is real. Yeah.
Well, it sure is. I think you made it's a great point, because one of the key components to make sure that the processes are followed by all is to utilize the processes in a day-to-day operations, right? So if there is an issue, you use the processes in order to solve issues. And that's what you just described. When something is not going well, when there is communication problems, where is quality control problems, etc., make sure that you bring in the process and figure out, is it a breakdown in the process? Is it a breakdown in communication? Is it both? Is it the people problem and a process problem, right? And then fix it. Then look at the process itself. Do you need to fix it? Do you need to explain it better? Was it followed? Was it not followed, right? I mean, that's part of it, because you bring the processes to life when you actually do that, because you use it on a day-to-day basis. And that's very important. And I think you already touched on that point as well, but in order for processes to be followed by all, it's really important that they are kept current, right? You just mentioned that before in the passing. So what is it that you do in your company with your group to ensure that those processes are being up to date and they're not obsolete?
Well, admittedly, we should probably be doing more. But I think that what we do is periodically, it is really helpful if someone is going to go on an extended, time off. It's like a natural opportunity where the person who's going to be covering for them wants to feel good about their new set of responsibilities. So it's a great opportunity to say, let's look at this SOP. Is all this information correct? Should something be updated? So that's one thing. We're a young company. We're 5 years old. We've grown a lot. And so we're looking at what systems, like what softwares are we using or what processes have we put in place? Maybe we put it in place and it worked, 2 years ago or a year ago, but now we should refresh it. And so as we are thinking about, what does our order management system look like? Or what, how are we using our CRM? Why are we spending so much time on this one step? How can we, take away some of the friction and make it a more seamless process that invites us to say, okay, well, what is the process and how should we be documenting this? And how should we really be improving it?
Absolutely. So it's keeping it current with changes. If the company is changing or there are new systems you're implementing or there are always new systems that come out and you want to look at it. So it's like you look at your systems and see that how do you utilize it and make sure that it's being documented. And I would add to it also having periodic review of the processes if they're not being looked at on a regular basis. Like I like what you said in terms of if somebody's going on vacation, you want to make sure that you review it ahead of time, right? I mean, that's definitely a great experience that is being shared there. And from my experience, is also setting time maybe once a year or every 6 months to review all the processes, not just the processes that need to be reviewed because there is a new system or because somebody is going on PTO, but just also regularly set up a time either once a quarter, every 6 months, once a year to review those processes so they're actually kept alive. So they're being touched, right? They're not being neglected. It just brings everything and make it alive.
Yeah. And I think, it is, it's a good reminder that there's always more opportunity. And just putting time on the calendar will be a reminder that time should be dedicated and earmarked to, reviewing the processes and seeing if anything should be updated or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Leeatt, that this conversation has been amazing because you're actually living the process, you are doing it. I mean, and that's why you managed to grow your company and be successful because, you're putting in the systems, you're putting the foundation, right? So that's really well done to you for creating such a company. Yeah. I have a question that is actually, I'm curious about, as you mentioned, like in corporate, the gifting is being done around the holidays, right? I don't think it's just corporate, this is like what we are used to. I mean, we buy more gifts. Well, obviously we buy gifts for anniversaries and birthdays, but the major gifts, we buy around the holidays. So do you feel like your business is seasonal, like you have your ups and downs, or do you feel like it's pretty steady?
Oh, no, it's definitely seasonal. And we do, we send gifts on behalf of our clients either for, to onboard new employees or for prospecting or for board members or for client anniversaries or, if someone wins a contract throughout the year. But it is absolutely seasonal where, there is a huge rush of orders and shipments in November and December.
So how do you handle it? How do you handle the seasonality?
A lot of planning. Improvements year over year. I mean, I really think a lot of it is planning in terms of, what do we believe the demand is going to be? How does that impact demand in terms of the workforce that's needed to package the gifts? So working with our team at our fulfillment center to make sure we've got the right, individuals to actually get all of that done, but also, what gifts are going to sell and what SKUs do we need to order and what's the timing and, can we incentivize some clients to, either ship earlier or later or, confirm their dates because that will help us. So that's a little bit of planning. There's probably a lot more, but that's just a little bit I could share now.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's more the stress level of the employees and yourself go up during those seasons?
I would say last year was a smooth fourth quarter. But it's, and so I don't know that I would say that, like the stress level, shot up, because thankfully it was very smooth. There's always things that happen outside of your control. So 2 years ago, right, with sort of still at the peak of COVID, where I don't know if you remember, but people were talking about Ship-a-Geddon, where there was just so much shipping happening. Consumers were stuck at home and they were buying from online retailers, and companies were buying and sending gifts and sending other packages. And so UPS, FedEx, and USPS were all like, no matter what, there's going to be a delay. Whatever you think the timeline is, anticipate a delay. So that's an example of there's always outside factors that you're trying to mitigate. You're trying to work within whatever those challenges are. And I think for us, it's just the volume is so high that we just need to know we have to stay cool, because there'll be something, and, to the best of our ability, if we've planned for it, it'll be as smooth as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Leeatt, I learned so much from you. You are such an example in terms of, okay, let's systematize, let's create the infrastructure, let's stay calm, let's figure out what we can control, and let's expand. And mainly, you're doing it for such a great purpose with such an impact, like that social impact. And I, if I may say, from interviewing so many people and talking to people and working with so many entrepreneurs, what I find that is true is that when somebody has a higher purpose, things fall into place, right? Because when you're motivated with wanting to help and wanting to make an impact and wanting to make a change, then you figure out how to make it, and then things follow. Wouldn't you agree?
I do agree. Sometimes there's challenges along the way, for sure, but I do agree.
That's great. Well, I always like to end the podcast with asking a question about a book, a podcast, somebody that inspired you or motivated you or mentored you. If I ask you that question, what would you say?
Well, I not so fairly recently, I read the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And I just thought it was a great, it chronicles his entrepreneurial journey, starting and growing his company, where, the view once he made it was all cheery and rosy, but he was chronicling all of the hard decisions and impasses, and maybe gave a glimpse into the internal turmoil that an entrepreneur struggles with, not to mention what happens outwardly. So I really enjoyed that book. I would recommend it.
That's great. All right. Well, thanks, Leeatt, for being such a great guest on this podcast and for sharing all your experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Auntie.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.